Hi, I'm with the School Sustainability Council, and I just wanted to start with an attempt to change your mind about the word sustainability. A more widely accepted definition for the word sustainability is the ability for people to flourish, as you've used the word a lot, flourish now, and for the ability of generations to come to flourish the same way. It's not necessarily that we need to repeat the things that we're doing now, forever and ever. It's the ability for us to continue on improving and for the future generations to be able to do the same.
So great. So now will you adopt enthusiasm for fossil fuels, given that that is the best thing for encouraging flourishing for decades to come?
You know, I respect a lot of your point of views and the perspectives you've shared, and it changed my mind on a lot of things. I really appreciate that.
Oh, thank you. Oh, it had to be a but. Yeah,
I just find that you're repeating a lot of the same opinions and not addressing questions directly. Here's a very, different question, something that you haven't talked about at all. Basically, I understand the positive positive human development that you've talked about, but we've seen in the past few decades a die-off, a mass extinction of over half of the world's large organisms. And I just want to hear about your perspective on the billions of other animals and plants that we rely on and that are extremely important to the natural world, that are much more sensitive to temperature change, natural disasters, and human development.
So I have no idea what you mean by die-off of half of the world's large organisms, like animals, or what?
Yes, large organisms and trees because of deforestation. All of these organisms are dying off because of temperature changes. One example would be salmon. They are really sensitive to just 1 degree of temperature change in the water. And in certain areas of the oceans, the temperature change hasn't just been 1 or 2 degrees, like you've mentioned. It's been up to 5 degrees. In other areas, it has 0 degrees of temperature change. So 5 degrees of temperature change for a salmon, it would kill it. And so it needs to move actually about 100 degrees per temperature of degree change. So that's 500 feet up coast.
Yeah, but you said half of, okay, 'cause I want to talk about how I think about this, but what you said is just false, that half of the large organisms are extinct. Like, there's extinction rates of large organisms are generally very far down, in part because we protect them.
I think that there was a misunderstanding. Maybe I didn't mean to say that. There's been a mass extinction of large organisms, and it's been a die-off of over half of the world's large organisms. Just a die-off of those populations that we have now, not of the species going extinct.
Okay, so I'll talk about what I think is the ideal and then what the facts are. So here's a question. What's the ideal relationship what's the ideal thing to happen in the rest of nature? I think the general assumption is the rest of nature should somehow be as undisturbed as possible. And I think of it more as we care about the rest of nature. We ultimately care about it because it affects us a lot. So I think of it as I want the most beneficial relationship possible with the rest of nature. And so that involves changing it in a lot of ways, where we increase certain species that benefit us and we decrease those that don't. So we decrease malarial mosquitoes, and we certainly increase the population of salmon. And I think there's a lot more we can do. In the oceans in particular, there's a really cool thing called mariculture, aquaculture, but also mariculture, which is you can do things to the oceans to dramatically increase the population of organisms that you want more of, like fish. And in general, the oceans are mostly dead, besides the coast, and actually a lot of life from oceans comes from human runoff. So there's this view that the rest of nature is perfect and that all we can do is ruin it. And I think that's just wrong. We can improve it a lot, but there's also a tendency to act like it's this incredible delicate balance and anything will disturb it, and then it's all going to go haywire. And this is really a dogma, that it's this stable thing. And you see it with all these claims about the mass extinction stuff. There's just not evidence of that. What's happening, people are making these claims with animals they can't count. So they'll say, well, we speculate that there were 5 million of these, and now we only can speculate there are 2 million of these. What we can actually do is we should actually identify what are the organisms that are most important, and what can we do to make sure that those flourish and we live in harmony with them. And if there is some inadvertent negative, what we should do is we should counteract it using ingenuity and technology. But notice that the solution of the climate catastrophists is never more human ingenuity to deal with things. It's always stop fossil fuel use. And it's also stop nuclear use, even stop hydroelectric use, because that interferes with the salmon. So their solution is always withdrawing human ability versus using more human ability. So my view is, I'm not saying fossil fuels will have no negative side effects. What I'm saying is we should weigh those, and then we should deal with them intelligently with the abilities that fossil fuels give us. But we should also be aware that the same people who have been predicting catastrophe for decades are spinning out false catastrophes by the minute, in part because they have this false belief of a delicate, nurturing planet, and in part because there's an amazing amount of research money and cultural support for doing it. And that's why you produce so much junk science. Not really a conspiracy, it's just a set of false assumptions and then incentives. And what you can always observe, and why I keep repeating this, is people are not looking at the full impact. They're ignoring the benefits and they're exaggerating the side effects, and that shows that they have a thinking problem. And that's why I think philosophy is so important.